The shark finally appears, and a police chief quietly says the line that will follow the movie forever. A swordsman performs an elaborate challenge, only to be dismissed with a single gunshot. 5 suspects stand in a police lineup, trying and completely failing to keep straight faces. These moments feel perfectly designed. They have timing, character, and confidence, but none arrived exactly as planned. Movie history loves the phrase totally improvised. Online, almost every famous reaction eventually becomes an accident, every pause becomes an actor forgetting a line, and every great performance becomes a camera secretly capturing something real. Most of those stories are cleaner than the truth. The real stories are better. Because a great accidental scene is rarely just luck. It is an actor, director, editor, and crew recognizing that the unexpected belongs in the movie. These are 8 moments when a production went off script and found something it could never have planned quite the same way. In Jaws, Roy Scheider's Martin Brody is throwing bait into the ocean when the shark rises behind him. Brody backs into the cabin, stunned, and tells Quint, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." It sounds like the screenplay has spent the entire movie walking toward that sentence. It had not. According to screenwriter Carl Gottlieb, the line grew from a running joke on the production. The crew worked from a barge that was too small for the equipment and support operation around it. Whenever something failed, lunch was late, the camera platform rocked, the logistics collapsed, someone would say they needed a bigger boat. Scheider began trying versions of the phrase in different scenes. Most did not survive. This one did, because it arrives at exactly the point when Brody understands the scale of the problem. The private joke suddenly becomes character, exposition, and comedy in 7 words. That is the first rule of a famous accident. The audience should never need the behind-the-scenes story for the moment to work. The story only reveals why it feels so alive. Paul Schrader's screenplay for Taxi Driver gives Travis Bickle an instruction rather than the finished speech audiences remember. Travis speaks to himself in the mirror, playing with his gun, acting like a cowboy. Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese built the rest in the room. "You talkin' to me?" is often described as a spontaneous line that simply escaped De Niro's mouth. The truth is more deliberate and more interesting. Scorsese kept the camera running and encouraged De Niro to repeat and develop the idea. De Niro turned a loose direction into a ritual. Challenge, pause, answer, repeat. Travis invents an enemy because there is nobody else in the room. The words became one of the American Film Institute's most memorable movie quotations, but their power is not really in the words. It is in the rehearsal we are watching. Travis is practicing the person he intends to become. Improvisation here was not comedy, and it was not chaos. It was writing through performance. The swordsman in Raiders of the Lost Ark enters like a boss battle. A crowd separates. He spins an enormous blade from hand to hand. Indiana Jones watches, exhausted, draws his revolver, and shoots him. The joke takes seconds. The original plan did not. The production had prepared an extended fight between sword and whip, but filming in Tunisia had become punishing, and Harrison Ford was sick with dysentery. A long action sequence was the last thing he could physically sustain. Ford has recalled proposing a much shorter solution to Steven Spielberg: shoot the man. They staged the gunshot, the swordsman sold the collapse, and a practical compromise became the clearest possible expression of Indiana Jones. He is brave, but he is not precious. If a fight can end before it begins, he will end it. This scene is frequently called an ad-lib. That is slightly misleading. Ford did not secretly pull a gun and surprise the set. The change was discussed, blocked, filmed, and edited. It was an on-set rewrite forced by reality. Accident created the problem. Collaboration created the scene. In Pretty Woman, Richard Gere presents Julia Roberts with a necklace before the opera. As she reaches toward it, he snaps the case shut. Roberts pulls back and releases that unmistakable laugh. Director Gary Marshall described the moment as a prank designed to wake up the energy of the scene. Gere knew. Roberts did not. Her surprise was real, and so was the laugh that followed. The important choice came later. An unexpected reaction is only raw material. Marshall and the editors had to decide that the playful break improved the film. It briefly removes the distance between Edward and Vivian, and it lets the audience see the warmth beneath a transaction that has been carefully dressed as a fairy tale. The shot became a signature image of the movie because the surprise did not embarrass the character. It revealed her. There is an ethical line in stories like this. Directors cannot build performances by endlessly deceiving actors or placing them in danger. But this small, harmless piece of play worked because Gere immediately shared the joke and Roberts turned surprise into connection. The police lineup in The Usual Suspects was supposed to establish 5 dangerous men. Each suspect steps forward and repeats the same obscene sentence. Instead of menace, the scene fills with suppressed smiles, broken delivery, and open laughter. That tone was not the original target. Bryan Singer later recalled a post-lunch, giggly atmosphere. Cast accounts add the detail that Benicio del Toro repeatedly broke the tension with flatulence. Whatever proportion belongs to exhaustion, chemistry, or one actor's digestive system, the footage would not behave like a conventional lineup. So the movie stopped fighting it. The laughter establishes something useful. These men are not strangers intimidated by the police. They recognize one another. They treat the procedure as theater. A production problem becomes instant group chemistry. Editing is the hidden author of almost every accidental movie scene. Hours of failure can be shaped into 30 seconds that feel inevitable. The camera captured the disorder, but selection gave it meaning. In Good Will Hunting, therapist Sean Maguire tells Will that his late wife used to pass gas in her sleep. The memory makes Sean laugh, then almost cry. Matt Damon laughs with him, and the camera appears to tremble with the crew's reaction. Robin Williams improvised the story. It is funny, but the scene survives because it does more than get a laugh. Until that point, Will protects himself with intelligence. He can analyze other people without risking anything of his own. Sean answers with a memory too intimate and ridiculous to be polished into a speech. The joke transforms grief from an abstract tragedy into a private detail. Sean does not miss a perfect woman. He misses a specific person, including the things nobody would place in a eulogy. Williams was famous for speed, voices, and invention. Here, improvisation produces stillness. Damon's response is valuable precisely because he is listening instead of waiting for a scripted cue. Sometimes the accident is not the scene going wrong. It is the scene becoming more honest than the page could safely demand. Writer and producer John Hughes generally wanted the actors in Home Alone to respect the script. Then John Candy arrived. Candy had one extremely long day to shoot his role as Gus Polinski, the polka king of the Midwest. In the back of a moving van, Gus tries to comfort Catherine O'Hara's desperate mother by telling a story about leaving his own child at a funeral parlor. Director Chris Columbus has said that the entire story was improvised. It is a strange detour, dark, rambling, and somehow gentle. Candy does not play the anecdote as a polished routine. He discovers it while speaking, adding uncomfortable details until even Gus seems unsure whether he is helping. The scene gives the movie breathing room between frantic travel and cartoon violence. More importantly, it gives O'Hara someone kind to play against. Candy's improvisation is not there to steal the film. It creates space for another character's fear. That is a harder form of improvisation than producing a quotable line. It changes the temperature of the movie without calling attention to the technique. Not every famous accident is improvised dialogue. In The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Aragorn believes Merry and Pippin may have died. He kicks a discarded helmet and falls to his knees with a raw cry. Viggo Mortensen broke 2 toes on the kick. Peter Jackson has explained in behind-the-scenes material that the take remained in the movie because the physical pain intensified the character's grief. This story is repeated so often that it has become a joke among fans. But repetition can hide the important distinction. Mortensen did not break his toes as a performance strategy, and pain is not proof of good acting. The accident created an unusually powerful take. The filmmakers still had to recognize it, make sure the actor was cared for, and decide whether it served the story. The lesson is not that actors should suffer for authenticity. It is that a camera sometimes records 2 realities at once, the fictional loss and the real impact, and the final image becomes inseparable from both. Once audiences learn a few true stories, we start wanting every famous moment to have one. The Joker's pause when the hospital explosion briefly stalls in The Dark Knight is often presented as Heath Ledger improvising through a real technical failure. Production accounts and planning materials make the viral version far too simple. The demolition and performance required coordination, rehearsed timing, and strict safety control. Ledger's comic hesitation is a performance inside a controlled effect, not an actor casually wandering through an accidental blast. Another favorite claims that Dustin Hoffman's "I'm walkin' here" outburst in Midnight Cowboy happened when a real taxi invaded a stolen shot. Hoffman himself helped popularize that version, while producer Jerome Hellman later said the cab and timing were controlled because the production could not simply risk an uncontrolled collision. Memory, publicity, and good storytelling can turn a complicated setup into a perfect accident. And sometimes, a real injury gets attached to the wrong creative claim. Leonardo DiCaprio did cut his hand while filming a tense dinner scene in Django Unchained and continued the take. But the later moment in which his character smears blood on another actor was achieved with stage blood, not by using the injury on his co-star. The correction does not make these scenes less impressive, it restores the work. A movie set is a machine built to control uncertainty. Hundreds of people coordinate light, sound, movement, props, schedules, and performances so that one moment can happen repeatedly. And then the machine slips. A running joke lands in the perfect scene. An illness destroys a fight sequence. A prank reveals a laugh. A room full of actors cannot stop breaking. A performer finds a memory that was never written. An injury gives one take an intensity nobody wanted, but nobody can ignore. The magic is not merely that these things happened. The magic is that someone noticed. Someone kept the camera rolling. Someone looked past the plan. Someone entered an editing room filled with alternatives and chose the version that felt most alive. The greatest off-script moments do not replace writing, directing, or craft. They prove how alert great filmmaking has to be. A screenplay creates the road. Production puts everyone on it. But sometimes the scene audiences remember forever is waiting one step to the side. That is where movies become stories, and where off-script begins.